Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first meeting for 2022. I would like to begin by we, Greater Shepparton City Council, acknowledge the Yorta Yorta peoples of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay our respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture, and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. I would also like to welcome two new staff members here today, Director of Infrastructure Gary Singh and Louise Mitchell, our Community Director. Welcome, and really great to have you on board. Our privacy notice: this public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Governance principles: Council considers that the recommendations contained in this agenda gives effect to the overarching governance principles stated in section 9/2 of the Local Government Act 2020. These principles are listed from 1 to 9 as printed in the agenda. Councillors, do we have any apologies today?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to note the apology of Councillor Greg James.
Thank you very much. And councillors, we also have a recommendation and apology from Councillor Priestley in regard to his absence of leave. Would a councillor like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Dobson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council accept the apology from Councillor Priestley and grant him a leave of absence from his official councillor duties from Monday 24th of January 2022 until the results of the upcoming federal election are declared. And number two, we note that during the leave of absence, Councillor Priestley has requested that his councillor allowance be suspended and he has returned his council devices.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, do we have a seconder? Sorry, seconder. Councillor Sarley.
I'll second that motion or recommendation. Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you very much. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now ask for any conflicts of interest that would need to be declared.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I will declare a general conflict on item 16.3.1, in particular the provision and extension of complementary timed parking for the Shepparton Central Business District.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson, and I also need to declare a conflict of interest on the same item, item 16.3. Item 7, which is the confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Is there any items of the minutes opposed? Councillor like to move the recommendation? Councillor Spence?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would move the recommendation as a motion that the minutes of the 21st December 2021 council meeting as circulated be confirmed.
Right, all those in favour? Carried, unopposed. Public question time, we have nil received. We now move to page 8, item 9.1, petition of immediate construction of footpath on Bridge Road to Lamba. There is a recommendation. Would a councillor like to move that recommendation? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council receive and note the petition titled Petition for Immediate Construction of Footpath on Bridge Road to Lamba in accordance with Governance Rule 80.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dobson. All those in favour? Motion carried. Councillors, we now have an item on page 9, item 10.1, the Alliance for Gambling Reform, commencement of partnership as a leadership council. There is also a recommendation on page 9. Would a councillor like to move the motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation on page 9 as a motion, and the motion says that the council commence a partnership as a leadership council with the Alliance for Gambling Reform. And number 2, commit to becoming a leadership council with the Alliance for Gambling Reform for an investment of $15,000 per year for 2 years before reassessing the cost versus benefit of being a paid member of the Alliance.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you. I second that motion. Recommendation.
Councillor Dalla, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. This motion is about entering into a partnership with the Alliance for Gambling Reforms at a cost of $15,000 per year, initially for a period of 2 years. The Alliance it exists and it has a purpose to reduce the harmful impacts of gambling. Gambling harms are well documented for Greater Shepparton, and the data evidence suggests that in comparison to other local government areas, annual expenditure on electronic gaming machines in Greater Shepparton is higher than the state average. It's higher than the Melbourne metropolitan average, and also the country local government area average. We also know that Greater Shepparton has a higher number of electronic gaming machines per person compared to the state. And a variety of studies have found that gambling losses are largely sustained by those who can least afford them. People on lower income groups, people having manual employment, or those without paid work, and people with limited educational backgrounds. This is the cohort that is most disadvantaged, but they tend to incur the highest gambling cost and losses. So looking at in addition to this electronic gaming machines, we also know that the presence of online gambling avenue has made it more challenging for us to control the spread of gambling and to reduce and mitigate the flow-on effects of this activity. This harmful impacts of gambling includes loss of health, loss of financials, loss of relationships, and etc. So Council's Public Health and Wellbeing Advisory Committee has rightly highlighted gambling as one of the areas of concerns to local public health and well-being. So I believe that this partnership will be a step in the right direction. It will allow Council to equip itself with better understanding and information sharing with leading players and agencies in this space. It also improves the chances of achieving better social outcomes, better health and well-being outcomes for the local community. I also understand that the Alliance are pursuing a ban on gambling ads, and they are pursuing actions to end the normalization of gambling in sports. So by joining the Alliance, Greater Shepparton City Council will have access to many resources. It will have access to the media and strategic support from the Alliance. And also it will have the enhanced ability to develop and deliver effectively on local gambling policies, and also to deal with any planning related applications for gambling venues in future. I believe that we must fight for a community which is free from gambling harm. So I believe that this is the right thing to do, and I endorse this partnership.
And an extension, Councillor Drill?
I'm fine, thank you so much. Right on the dot.
Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just reiterating what Councillor Abdullah beautifully put. And I'd just like to say, look, I'm not against gambling per se. I can have a flutter, but fortunately, I'm not addictive to it. And, clubs that derive money from gambling, they do provide revenue to the state governments, and they do trickle down into the community some of the events that they can fund as well. But at what cost to that community? That's the question. And what I am against is the psychological manipulation of this systemic gambling that's taking place. As an example, the televised live sporting events, where the narrative or the commentary seamlessly is included with the odds and the online gambling with the online gambling provider to help maybe the person who's wanting to gamble to be included in the action. And it is so wrong. But there are sporting clubs now that are making a stand against this, and forming this is part of what we're on about. Now, this recommendation is about the Alliance for Gambling Reform to commence the partnership and the Leadership Council that they're talking about here, and it has my 100% support in regards to that. For if we are leaders in the community, then we need to show that leadership, to support, to encourage, and to protect our community. Thank you.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spings?
Thank you. Just to add, I suppose, I have a bit of a personal experience on this in that I worked as a community development officer in the Gamblers Help program locally. I had a little look at, dusted off the skills and had a look at the figures. Over the weekend, 2 years ago when I was in this role, I would go around saying that Shepparton spends $90,000 every single day on the pokies here in Greater Shepparton. It is now $108,000. So in the past 2 years, it's jumped up nearly $20,000 that we're spending every single day on the pokies. That's just the pokies. That's not counting, that's the only type of gambling that we can actually properly track. So that's not counting sports betting, online betting, the numerous other ways. You can pretty much bet on anything. And quite frankly, it is this industry, the gambling industry, has millions and millions of dollars to pump into psychologists to design their machines and advertising that is everywhere, that is changing the way kids are growing up thinking sport and gambling hand in hand go together. I mean, even the commentary is including the odds while you're watching it. So quite frankly, we're up against a beast of a machine in the gambling industry. And when I was working in this space, I was one of 2 community development workers covering 5 shires to try and reduce gambling harm. And while I'm no longer with them, but now that that role and that purpose does incredible work and is incredibly important, one of my main things I saw when we were in it is that it needs to be attacked from every level. So this is our moment as local government to support our local communities, to join the alliance and have a bigger voice. This alliance has I think over 20 different councils that are on it. And quite frankly, it's a bit of a bargain for 15 grand to join in with the resources and the power behind it, to try and tackle, it's not about eliminating gambling, but it's about making it safer, and trying to reduce that stigma that says it's individual rather than industry. Having, gaming machines open at 3 a.m. when it's the only place that's open is quite frankly asking for trouble. It's an industry that's set up to take money. That's how it supports itself. So I very much support us being in this moment, joining this alliance and putting it on the radar of something that we care about from a public health perspective. It's certainly important to me. I remember it being said that essentially gambling is where smoking was in the 70s. The legislation hasn't gotten behind it just yet. The risks are starting to come out. We're starting to understand it better. Give it a little bit more time and we'll be right in that same space that there'll be all sorts of things happening around it.
Time.
But until then, I'm glad we're joining the alliance.
Okay. You're more welcome to an extension if you need it.
Now we're good.
Okay. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sarley?
Thank you, Mary Keith. Some really good points that have been made, but we always have to be very careful what we advocate for. On one hand, this would have a huge benefit to those individuals and families that are currently or suffered from gambling addiction, and look, we probably all know someone as well. But what we advocate for could have a limit on business operations, which has been touched on as well. So, you have to be mindful of what that looks like from a flow-on effect to local employment and effectively those businesses and industries that give back to the local community as well. But, I mean, obviously issues like this can provide challenges on either side, but gambling cannot be ignored. And so I'm really keen to see how joining the Alliance can lead to better outcomes for all those that are suffering from gambling.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 14, item 10.2, the Universal Access and Inclusion Plan 2022 to 2026. Would a councillor, sorry, there was a recommendation also on page 14. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation. Says that the Council adopts the Greater Shepparton Universal Access and Inclusion Plan 2022 to 2026.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spinks? Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd firstly like to congratulate all those who have worked on this particular plan and those who have briefed us in the lead up to it. It's excellent work in being put that together. They've kept us informed the whole way through and have taken on board any considerations that we may have, as well as the community too. It's so pleasing to see the narrative moving from what we used to term handicapped to disability now to access and inclusion. The narrative is really important and the words that are used are very important as well. We now have in the field, particularly in sports, we have sporting heroes that fall into this particular category. People like Kurt Fernley or Louise Savage or Dylan Alcott, they're actually household names now. And, if you went back, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you wouldn't hear of those particular names. And look, originally when we had this particular plan, it was 18 years ago, and it was really a statutory requirement. Now it is an action plan, and it's a way to move forward as opposed to being just statutory. It is not just a tick and flick, but a conscious document that has meaningful, and it has verbs. Now, I say that very deliberately because, as my grade 3 teacher, Jenny Houlihan, would say, a verb is a doing word, an action. And in this particular case, the vibe is the verb. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, yes. I think Councillor Brophy covered it quite well. So I suppose just to add, when I think of the Universal Access and Inclusion Plan, I'm so excited to see the ways that it's a very bold and ambitious plan. And this really speaks to, if we can complete all of these things genuinely by 2026, we will have a more accessible and inclusive community, which of course is the point, but it's so exciting to see that, as Councillor Brophy said, this is not a tick and flick document. This is genuinely trying to improve the amenity, the access, the inclusion, and just our lifestyles here in the community that we live in. And it really speaks to, access and inclusion for those with disabilities, but it really speaks to access and inclusion for anyone, whether you're 3 or 80, or you happen to injure your ankle and be on crutches for a little while, or people with prams. It's anyone and everyone being able to get from A to B in a way that is safe and enjoyable, and just being able to live our lives the way that we want to, in a way that takes away the barriers. And I'm very excited to see in the action plan, you can very clearly see the links to other parts of our plans. And, it talks about the importance of footpaths and playgrounds, and you can see how it's really embedded across council operations, across the work that we do. Access and inclusion is, as far as I'm concerned, a core part of council business. And I'm very excited to have this one hopefully being adopted today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. And firstly, I'd like to congratulate our Access and Inclusion Officer under the community. I think this is a bold plan, and I think it shows true leadership within regional Victoria, even though that this plan fulfils our statutory obligation under Section 64 of the Disability Discrimination Act to have a disability action plan. But I think there's more to it than just sort of ticking a few boxes. And as I say, I do congratulate the council officers in putting this together. I noticed that there's a couple of issues here that took my mind. Improved, there it was here. Oh, there it is. The community action plan to request for accessible parking bays to be implemented in specific locations in the Shepparton CBD. Request for more accessible parking around the schools and higher education institutions. More public awareness around the use of guide dogs and assisted animals and their rights of entry, and more engagement with and usage of emerging technology relating to access and inclusion. And they, to me, represent the practical solutions or the practical outcomes to this particular plan. It's not just motherhood statements, it's real action that we as a council, as a community, as a leader within the community can undertake. And again, I congratulate council on bringing this forward.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 20, item 10.3, the Greater Shepparton Disability Advisory Committee draft terms of reference and recruitment of new members. There is also a recommendation on page 20. Would the council like to move the motion? Would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council, 1, adopt the draft terms of reference for the Greater Shepparton Disability Advisory Committee, the DAC, and 2, note the process to commence recruitment for new members.
much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you. I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, all advisory committees have a terms of reference that sets out how they work, and this is simply the latest version of that, I suppose. It allows for how members are recruited, how they spend their time, and a variety of things. But probably more what I want to speak to is the recruitment of new members. This is probably just a call out to community to say, if you have lived experience as an individual or a carer or are a person that has passion and experience to share with this committee, I highly encourage you to apply to be a member. This is such a valuable committee. The ability for us to tap into the lived experience, for them to have a direct sort of line to share their feedback and their experiences and their thoughts and their ideas. It's, we can't come up with this stuff ourselves. The committee, you know, provides us with that avenue, and it's essentially a brains trust of incredibly passionate and knowledgeable members. So, you know, if you could be one of them, I highly encourage you to keep an eye out for that recruitment process, which will commence. It's going to be a month-long recruitment campaign early in 2022. So keep an eye out and please apply.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. And the report talks about the purpose of the committee, and it is to provide a platform for advocacy and representation on issues relating to people living with a disability in the community. And so, for so many years, people with disabilities like this have been put into the background too much. But as per Councillor Brophy's discussion just a moment ago about the number of people out in the public eye now who are really leading the way in disability advantages, it is something that we must support. And it says that we are to support and inform council on future directions relating to issues affecting those with a disability, to inform good decision making and enhance inclusive practices across council. And I join with Councillor Spinks in asking members of the community to put themselves forward. This is probably one of the more worthwhile committees to be on, because you know you're really doing something for your community. There's nothing in it for anybody except to provide the best assistance to those people who need it. And I again congratulate council on being involved in this issue.
Thank you very much. Any councillor like to speak against the motion? The councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 27, item 10.4, Positive Ageing Strategy and Advisory Committee. There is also a recommendation on page 27. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation as a motion, which says that the council, number one, adopts the revised terms of reference for the Greater Shepparton Positive Ageing Advisory Committee, and number two, notes the commencement of a process to recruit new members to the advisory committee.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
I'd second that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. Very briefly, positive aging is about being connected, being valued, and being respected as we grow old in our community. And that's why promoting and supporting age-friendly community and ensuring that their civic engagement, their inclusion, their health, and their well-being outcomes are all ensured. So it is very vital. Our Positive Aging Advisory Committee is there to provide advice to council on opportunities and challenges that relate to positive aging within Greater Shepparton. As a councillor representative, this is my second year on this advisory committee, and during the past few months, the committee has had many discussions on the current gaps, whether it's in terms of its membership or whether it's in terms of the working arrangements of the advisory committee. So now is the opportunity to address these gaps through the updates and through the revision of these terms of reference. I welcome all the changes that have been recommended to the terms of reference. which include inclusion of a selection criterion for community members to be selected on diversity of interests, backgrounds, culture, age, gender, and experiences. Obviously, as a council, we are determined to promote and increase diversity in all areas of work, including the Positive Aging Advisory Committee's membership. And also there's a recommendation around the frequency of the meeting, monthly meeting. So frequency from monthly to once in 2 months. It is also worth noting that in 2009, Council adopted a positive aging strategy, which was for a period of few years, and from 2009 to 2014. But however, until now, since 2014, they haven't, that positive aging strategy has not been reviewed, and we do not have a current strategy in place. So the Positive Aging Advisory Committee also identified a need to develop a strategy, and I'm very pleased to see that that has already been recognized in our Council's strategic plan. It aligns with Council's key strategic activity in terms of making sure that the social that we are not leaving anyone behind, and we are fulfilling our social responsibility and ensuring the well-being of all members of our community. So I'm happy to see these recommendations around the revised terms of reference. At the same time, I also note that the motion is saying about the commencement of the membership process, recruitment process. Again, at this stage, I really want to thank the current members of this Positive Aging Committee who are very passionate about this, and I congratulate them, and I note the commencement of the membership process.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I thought I'd jump in before another fellow councillor who's frothing at the bit to speak on this particular, I'm sure. Can I say that the advisory committees are extraordinarily helpful. The work, the feedback, and the heavy lifting in the policy formation that they do is incredibly important to us councillors. But it also comes at a bit of a cost, and each committee, advisory committee, it does stretch council resources, and it does stretch councillors to try and cover all these committees as well. And extraordinarily supportive of this, but maybe perhaps we can look at some point in time some amalgamation of a number of social inclusive advisory committees. It's at least worth the conversation, I think, down the track. Having said that, there are immediate members of the community that come to mind who could potentially nominate for this particular advisory committee. They are committed, they speak out, and they are passionate, and I think that they should really put their hand up. And I think that we also should be have in the front of our mind too that we are a very multicultural community. We have an Indigenous population as well, which we would love them to be on that particular committee, because I think that would just add so much to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would a council wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 32, item 11.1, contracts awarded under delegation for December 2021 to January 2022. There is also a recommendation on page 32. Would a council like to move a motion? Councillor Sarli.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 32 of the agenda, item 11.1.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you. I second that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sarli, would you like to speak to the motion?
Briefly, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Look, we will see some big projects start to take shape in the coming months, and I just want to highlight a few of those projects. Item 2091, Orchard Circuit Retardation Base and Pump Station. We've got item 2218, which is a new perimeter fence at Acklemoves. Item 2220, a number of missing link paths throughout Shepparton and Tatura. We also see item 2198, Kyla West Growth Corridor Traffic Assessment. Item 2002, some works will take place at the Shepparton Sports Precinct, and then we've seen some signage upgrades with item 2212, and we also have 4 contracts which are currently advertised but not yet awarded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just very briefly, these are, as I said, contracts awarded under delegation, And look, some of them are front-end stuff and some of them are the back-end stuff. The front-end stuff, which is the things that people see and are visible and maybe a little bit more sexy than the back-end stuff, but things like shared pathways, missing links program and men's shed, those sort of things are very visible and people can see them. But the on-site crushing of recycled concrete and bricks, retardation basins and that, they're sort of at the back end and people don't see them, but they're just as important and just as valuable, and to make sure that they do get awarded under delegation.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 36, item 11.2, the Q2 forecast review for 2021 to 2022. There is also a recommendation on page 36. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council adopt the revised forecast identified by the 2021/2022 Q2 forecast review.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdallah. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. The first thing I'd like to note is the Chief Executive Officer is of the opinion that a revised budget is not required, and that's an excellent result for us. A couple of issues that come out during the report, and the main one talks about COVID-19. I remember going back when we were all on the campaign trail, COVID-19 and the recovery thereof was front of mind by everybody, and so it is, and it still is today. I see here that the income statement, there was a forecast review of an accounting surplus of $13.5 million, down $7.92 million or 36.9% from the Q1 adopted forecast. And some of the reasons for that is that there's approximately $2.2 million compared to the 2021 adopted budget, and facilities such as Aqua Moves nearly $500,000, Riverlinks $500,000, Victoria Park Lake Caravan Park $150,000, Tat Park $100,000, and the Shepparton Sports Stadium $58,000 are expected to generate lower income through user fees because of, quite obviously, the COVID pandemic that's with us. Partially offsetting this reduced income was some reduced casual expenditure in Aqua Moves $500,000 and Riverlinks $160,000. The net estimated cost to council of COVID-related closures, not including additional support provided to the community in the adopted budget, is approximately $1.2 million. And that is a substantial amount of money, given the fact that at the last budget process, the council agreed not to have any increase in council rates. So there's a building block upon building block of doing hard, but I still think we should congratulate our officers in maintaining some very good figures here. For example, the working capital, that is current assets as a percentage of current liabilities, is projected to be 166% compared to 156% in any manner of form. That is a very good percentage to have. That shows we've got plenty of capital in us, working with us. And in terms of the balance sheet, the cash flow statement says that our cash balance remains at $19.13 million. Now, they're the sorts of figures that a lot of the council projects are built upon. If we don't have the cash and we don't have the assets to go with it, it gets a lot harder. The other interesting thing with the loans and borrowings indicator for Q2 forecast review has remained steady at 39.1, which is well within the band. Now, in future works or in future developments that might occur, that might have to go up a little bit, or it might have to go up substantially. We'll wait and see.
Don't need an extension, Councillor Thompson. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Abdallah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Dobson has covered this item very well, but just a few points to highlight that this quarterly review process, it's a regular process at council, and whereby managers review the income and expenditure, and then they update the year-end forecast of the budget. So the quarterly review report, it provides details of variations in income and expenditure, and as Councillor Dobson has highlighted that looking at the income statement projections, we have an accounting surplus of $13.52 million, which is down from the Q1 adopted forecast. However, I would like to highlight that the overall adjusted operating result has improved because it is showing a decrease of $1.3 million in the operating deficit when compared to the Q1 adopted forecast. Also on the income side, as has been noted, COVID-19 pandemic, it continues to have an impact on council's earnings and revenues. Our fees and charges from facilities such as Aquamos and Riverlinks, they have decreased. So the report that has been presented, it shows details of all the variances in operating and capital grants. On the expenses side, I also note that the net estimated cost to council of COVID-19 related closures is approximately $1.2 million. We have also seen some decrease in employee cost, but then we have seen a corresponding increase in the materials and services cost. So all these variations are highlighted and are presented in details in the report. These impacts, as I've said, it's a regular process, and these impacts and the variations are monitored very closely throughout the year. And what else? Yes, with regards to the capital works expenditure, all the variations are provided, and I'm glad to see that these are very, very detailed. So if anybody wants to see what's happening to a particular capital works project and what are the projected variations, they can go and have a look at the report. All in all, looking at all the financial KPIs that are included in this report and the following agenda item, it looks satisfactory at this point. So that's all that I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 39, item 11.3, the January 2022 monthly financial report. There is also a recommendation on page 39. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation as a motion that the council receive and note the January 2022 monthly financial report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dodson.
I'd like to second that motion. Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, we don't have, I think this topic has already been covered in the preceding agenda item where we have described how what are the variations and what was based on the quarterly review. So nothing more to add, and just to emphasize that all the financial KPIs that have been presented, they are included in the report, and they are showing satisfactory position in a way that they are within the target band. So nothing more to add. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it's been covered, but a couple of things that always interest me is where our money's invested, and I noticed that we've still got a lot of our investments in the extremely strong quarter, and we have a good lot of investments in the GMCU, which is a locally operated banking system. I'd look here at the asset renewal and upgrade, which is always an important factor when you're looking at this. We try and keep our renewals and upgrades up around the 100%. I know at the moment the year-to-date actual is 98%, and the projected full year is 145%. That means that we're keeping up to date with all our resurfacing and all the things that you've got to do, and we're not getting too far behind. I do note that in the other statement we just looked at, that there was a big write-off of investment, not investments, but assets that we've had sitting around for a long time, and we've got them out of the balance sheet, which is a good idea. But no, a good strong month again, and there's really not a lot to say. The cash flow statement looks healthy, and that's all I'm really interested in.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 41, item 12.1, the Shopfront Improvement Grant Program. There is also a recommendation on page 41. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Sarley.
Thank you, Mayor Keith. I will move the recommendation as a motion on page 41 of the agenda, item 12.1.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you. I second that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sarley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Mayor Keith. Look, this is another great initiative from our economic development team, in this case to enhance business shop fronts. This program forms part of Stage 3 COVID support response plan for the financial year 21-22. The financial support will be grants of up to $2,000 with a dollar-for-dollar matching investment from the applicant, with a total budget allocation of $30,000. We've seen many upgrades take place along the likes of McLennan Street, Mooroopna, Maud Street between High and Vaughan Street. The Bud lighting adds a level of attraction to surrounding CBD streets, and before the end of the year, the mall project will be completed. So the positive outcomes from this grant program will be to attract new investment opportunities and support existing business growth, support landlords to retain and attract tenants, improve marketability, and most importantly, continue to promote Greater Shepparton as an attractive place to work, live, visit, and most importantly, invest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Keith. Just very briefly, what I'm really buoyed about, in particularly this grant program, is that yes, it does mention about Shepparton CBD and the commercial areas, but also the main streets within small towns. Quite often they're forgotten with, in a lot of programs and just in conversation. So really pleased that this has been spread out to them. It is a modest and seeding funding grant to commence with, but I think it's something that may well grow over over the next financial year and coming in, and we'll be a review on that and see how it's taken up. Hopefully it's well oversubscribed and that we can proceed even further with that. I think just one thing that we should be mindful of is that when we're looking at the CBD precinct boundary, is that is actually growing. And so we want to make sure that if it has grown, as it has residential areas, has industrial areas, etc., that we do keep up to date with the zoning of that to make sure that we incorporate and that there aren't some shop fronts that just missed out because they're just outside the boundary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor Keith. While I very much understand, essentially we've already approved this cost as it came part of Stage 3 of our COVID-19 recovery package, and certainly there's a lot going on in the CBD. The mall reconstruction obviously is impacted, and we continue to see that happen. But I would like to see this, the program, this essentially is a 12-month trial program, that it would be reviewed within 12 months, and that we would, in that review, expand this to beyond the CBD, and even in Mooroopna, it's beyond the main street. I'm very glad to see that the main streets of the smaller towns are included, but within Shepparton, a lot of I couldn't help but notice a lot of the points of benefits that Councillor Sarley was pointing out, I'm pretty sure other small businesses across Shepparton would also like to take advantage of. And though this is a small benefit, we're only talking about $2,000 for each grant applicant. It's a dollar-for-dollar matching investment. So it's a small incentive and encouragement for a refreshing of shop fronts across our municipality. I'd argue right now it's not across our municipality as widely as it could be, and I'd like to see that if we were to continue with this grant, that we would expand that as a matter of priority. I think it's right now would be hard to justify to the other businesses across Shepparton, Mooroopna and the municipality wider why this is being focused on the CBD. And I suppose the larger point of how much do we invest in the CBD, how much is focused on that, and are we being fair and equitable to all? So I am supportive of this grant program going ahead. I think the grant certainly has merit. There's been a lot of work done behind the scenes, which is to be commended, but I would take that as a request that when we do review it, we look to expand as well.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak for the motion? Councillor Doolan.
Yep, thank you. Briefly, I really like the idea that Councillor Spinks has raised, and yes, I also believe that the scope of these grants should be extended to beyond the CBD, to smaller area, to other areas. We have other precincts, for instance, whether it's St. George's Road or whether it's other other small businesses and other shops in other parts of Shepparton and small towns. So, but all in all, it is a worthwhile initiative. It aligns with Council's strategic direction of having a vibrant and diverse economy, and it encourages and facilitates investments and expansions. This grant will help in the upkeep of shop fronts, which in turn will create inviting and attractive shopping areas in the CBD and small towns. Council is providing this incentive to local businesses to sort of freshen up the tired-looking space and rejuvenate business activity. So that is all good. It is yet another demonstration of Council's strong, tangible support to local businesses and to achieve better economic outcomes. So I'm supportive of this initiative. I just want to again make another point, which I sort of on many matters I repeatedly make, that we want to make sure that inclusion and diversity is ensured and is achieved. So it is very important that when we are promoting these business grants, it targets all our local businesses within the CBD and small towns, which includes multicultural businesses, because they do have language barriers. So we need to make sure that the communications and marketing and comms, they are reaching out to those businesses. And these grants are truly inclusive of all the cohorts of businesses within the CBD and small towns. Yeah, so all in all, a good initiative. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Sali, would you like your right of reply before we go to the vote? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 45, item 12.2, the land sale at 30R Florence Street, Shepparton. There is also a recommendation on page 45. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move that the council resolve to authorise the sale of part of the land at 30R Florence Street, Shepparton, shown generally as the 2,415 square metre rectangular parcel marked T2PT on the Spire Australia Proprietary Limited drawing, and the carrying out of all necessary actions to effect the sale, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign all documentation associated with or necessary to effect the sale.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sali?
Happy to second that motion. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Before I do speak, I just have a question to the Chief Executive. I note here that there's not, doesn't talk about a valuation. Is it going to be independently valued and sold at that valuation price?
Already has been, I believe, Councillor Dobson.
It's been valued? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. This piece of land, and it's a bit of landlocked land, is vacant and is not required in association with a drainage basin or to be used by council for any other purpose. We put it out for public tenders to anybody had any ideas about it and any submissions, and no submissions were received. In July of 2020, the Coppolas Group approached council. They've got some adjoining property and proposed to pay all of the costs incurred by council in relation to the sale of the proposed sale of land, the survey costs, legal costs and title office lodgement fees, and they amount to some amount of money. The Coppolas Group has also proposed to accept any risks in relation to any contamination of the land, and this land has been around for quite some time. There's every chance that there could have been some contamination. We don't know. But I like the idea of cleaning up these little parcels of land that no longer are applicable to the council. It's money in our pocket and somebody else can make use of the land better than what we could. So it's a fairly stock standard sale of unused land to the private sector.
Very much. Councillor Sali, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Dobson covered it very well, but just highlight the fact that, in these circumstances, that if council don't require the land in other forms as well, that, obviously at a cost, especially when it involves businesses to expand their footprint, we should be really proactive in that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 50, item 12.3, the land purchase at 7 Creeks Drive, Kyalla. There is also a recommendation on page 50. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Dobson?
I don't wish to hog it, but I know this piece of land, and I move, Mayor O'Keefe, that the council resolve to authorise the purchase of proposed acquired land, being part of land at 97 Creeks Drive, Kyalla, for an amount of $241,000 plus GST and professional costs necessarily incurred by the landowner as a result of the purchase, and authorise the carrying out of all necessary actions to effect this purchase, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign all documents associated with or necessary to effect the land purchase.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sarli?
Back you up, Councillor Dobson. I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor O'Keefe. This is a unique parcel of land that's at the western edge of the Sevens Creek estate and borders onto the Sevens Creek itself. It was quite a large parcel of land. The owners wanted to sell the whole lot because I understand that they may be moving interstate. However, council had moved prior to them coming to that decision to acquire some of the land, and the reason for the acquisition is shown on a photo on page 52 of the agenda that talks about a shared path alignment, and it's going to continue the shared path from the Sevens Creek estate heading south. But the outcome of this was very good, because the initial discussions, and when you looked at the initial plan, it showed that we were going to acquire half the nice big dam that they've got. It was a lovely looking place, all ducks and goodness knows what floating on it, and it was going to be a bit impractical. So we went back to the drawing board and said, no, let's go around that, and that piece of infrastructure was kept with the house. And I understand that both the vendors and the council have been able to come to an amicable arrangement. So a win-win on both parts. This allows the vendors then to do what they will with the lovely home that they've got out there and the surrounds that have been left. But the more important thing for the community of Shepparton, it will allow us to, as the council or the community, to acquire a big parcel of land that is basically flood prone on the banks of the Sevens Creek, which is good for parkland and good for a pathway for both cycling and walking. And it continues the excellent work. There's already a path to, I think, to the north of this that links up going back into Shepparton. So this is a continuation, and it's taking pedestrians and cyclists away from the busy highway. So it's just another great asset for the city of Shepparton. Many years ago, you know, Shepparton was second in a competition run nationwide, having the best paths, the walking paths in Australia. So I think if we keep up with this, we might get that back again. So a very good result all around.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sarli, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think Councillor Dobson covered it very well. Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Sorry, Councillor Summer, was that in favour? Thank you so much. Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 55, item 12.4, the Climate Emergency Action Plan. There is also a recommendation on page 55. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'd like to move the recommendation to a motion that the council release the draft Our Climate Safe Future Climate Emergency Action Plan for community consultation.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brophy.
Thank you. I'd like to second that recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Gosh, a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes to make this happen. The council staff that have created this document, which is a very lengthy, informed document, is quite frankly just incredible. There's been quite a few documents that have come to us. They're all a part of a puzzle that is us responding to the climate emergency that was declared. We have covered already council's response in declaring 2030 zero carbon emissions. This is now talking about community and how council works with community to also have their own targets and to create a climate safe future. This is an aspirational document. There is nothing, this is a, you know, it's a collaborative effort and journey that we need to go on to make these changes, but done because it benefits all in many different ways. I want to highlight a couple of bits from the report. The strategic priorities and actions from this document are demonstrating climate change leadership, accelerating the transition to zero net emissions communities, building a cool, climate resilient community, and supporting a thriving, climate smart local agriculture sector. It's really thinking about all of the different parts of our community and the ways that each of them experience climate, experience the need to adapt and mitigate climate. And it's all about doing it with, not for, or not to. This is about doing it alongside community and bringing you on with the journey. Some of the benefits, because I think we have to highlight them all the time whenever we can. Some of the benefits include, for the community, include reducing energy costs for community, increased health benefits, improving aesthetics of the region, protecting and increasing biodiversity, empowering community to take action, visitor attraction to the region, and economic development and new industries. This is classic triple bottom line goodness. It benefits people, it benefits environment, and it benefits economy. This is something that is good practice for everybody. And responding just makes sense. Yes, we can talk about how we do it, and that's the point of community consultation. That's why we're putting it out there. We want to know what you think of what we've come up with and what your thoughts are that might be missed or we could change. But it's about how we can create the most climate safe future that we have, not only for us today, but for our kids, for the generations that will come after us as well. It is based on science, it is based on evidence, it is based on data, and now it has been informed, now it is going to public consultation. It is, while this might be one of my favourite documents, it's intense. Like, I know that it's hard reading.
For an extension, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Granted.
I know that it is hard reading, and so I do encourage that when it comes out for public consultation, I encourage council to make sure that we've broken this down so that it can be clearly understood in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to go about it. The document has everything in it. If you're ready to make a cuppa, sit down and really get deep in it. But if you kind of just want to hit the highlights, I think we need to just make sure that it's readable to any community member that wants to take a bit of an interest in it. We have a very, very bold and involved community consultation process planned. We really want to be out there, or council want to be out there, on the streets, meeting people, talking to people from all different industries, really getting across, you know, when we talk about how we're going to do this with community, it means every part of community. What does that look like if you own a business, if you're a farmer, if you're, you know, a random person trying to pay your bills at home? What does that look like for everybody and anybody? And I highly encourage everybody to give us your feedback. I know community consultations can seem a bit overwhelming. We put a lot of them out there, but this is a big one that will really drive how we can work together to benefit our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brophy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Gee, there's not much more I can say on that. Councillor Spinks really covered that so beautifully. All I can say really is that this is a work in progress. It is a draft, and I am buoyed by the ability to formulate this action plan by the environmental crew within council. They've listened to the councillors, they've listened to the community stakeholders that they've engaged with, and their research into best practice has just been phenomenal. All I can say is release the draft.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would the councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Doolan?
Thank you. In addition to what my fellow councillors have already said, and they have covered it very nicely. I just want to say and highlight that it's really heartening to see that our youth committee has been so actively involved on this project, being a part of steering committee, being a part of all the consultation, targeted consultation that has happened so far. So I'm really pleased about it. Of course, as Councillor Spinks has highlighted, this is a collaborative model of coming up with a plan. So it should enable a higher degree of communities buy-in, I'm hoping. And also it is based on scientific evidence, and all the 74 actions in 4 strategic areas have been explained, and I'm really hoping that when it goes out to community consultation, it is explained in a more sort of user-friendly language so that everybody can understand and get on board with this ambition of ours. So also want to congratulate to the team that has been involved on this project so passionately. Definitely Council's leadership and drive to achieve excellent outcomes in its quest to address climate emergency is admirable, and it is noteworthy. So I'm very pleased to see that the draft climate emergency action plan is now ready for community consultation. Thank you.
Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sarli.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. No, I just really want to back up the comments that Councillor Spinks emphasised around community consultation. That's sort of where I'm coming from on this side, that we probably know big business have the resources and funds available to move into this space a lot quicker, and it was obviously highlighted that we want to tap into those grassroots industries. We speak of the Fruit Growers Victoria, Murray Dairy, Chamber of Commerce, sporting clubs, those real grassroots where we can really get a good understanding of what they're going to require, obviously with council support to achieve a goal that they're going to set out to do. So I can't emphasise that more importantly about consultation from a grassroots level is very important.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 64, item 12.5, the Shepparton Recruitment of 1% AEP flood mapping project from August 2021. There is also a recommendation on page 64. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Sarli?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'll move the recommendation as a motion on page 64 of the agenda 12.5.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dobson?
Yes, I'd second that motion, Mayor O'Keefe.
Councillor Sarli, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you. Look, obviously a big report, a big study, and I think with any of these studies, it's always about what side of the coin you're on. And look, it's a hard one. Look, I'd presume most landowners would know if their property was impacted from a flood overlay, but one thing a lot of property owners don't know is what that means when looking to develop your land. The ability to allow more land to be developed can be achieved for some properties. This is because of new technology providing a different lens over our land, but it can also minimise your development size because of potential increase in flood levels. Personally, I do question the over-cautious approach with this study, but the advice I've received from council officers is that we have to do this every 2 years due to state requirements. And look, most importantly, all impacted property owners will have another opportunity to provide feedback during the planning scheme amendment stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. It's well known that the Goulburn Valley is a flood-prone area. We've got convergence of 2 major rivers, the Goulburn and the Broken River, and there are other areas within this flood study as well. And those of us who have lived in the area all our lives have been through 2 or 3 of these floods, and it's a harrowing situation. But more importantly than that, we've learned a few lessons. I remember going back, I think it was 93, was it, when half of Taylor's estate went underwater because a lot of the houses were below the flood level. You go on to Tassica estate many years later, the outcomes from some of that flood study in those days was that they allowed the streets, or the major streets, to become floodways in their own manner in the case of major flooding, and they built the blocks up around. So, there was lessons learnt, and if you go out to the Boulevard estate, for example, they've recommissioned the floodway out there. But the updated flood modelling allows the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority and the council to prepare revised flood mapping for the study area that would need to be implemented in the Greater Shepparton Planning Scheme via a proposed planning scheme amendment. So it's very important that this council and its associated partners get this flood study right, and by having these mapping studies done, that only helps, and it's almost, well, it is a statutory requirement. I agree with some of the comments that Councillor Sali has made. Flooding is one thing to one people and another thing to another. Sometimes the Goulburn River will flood before the Broken, or the Sevens will come up at the same time, or whatever. So there are different modellings going on, but we've got to keep out in front of it. I note that this flood study is not only around the Shepparton area, but it goes around the downstream to Lochgarry, upstream of Shepparton to Lamba, and out to Kyalla and the Broken, Kyalla West and the Sevens Creek. So all our creeks and rivers are involved in this study. So it's an important piece in building our infrastructure into the future.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? The councillor wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Bariki?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I've certainly lived through the 74, 93 and 2009 floods. So I do have a fairly good understanding of flood and been affected in that particular way. 20 years ago, I was with a group that were looking for the provision for a new secondary college south of High Street, because if you know Shepparton fairly well, all the secondary provisions are north of High Street, except for Maguire, who's no longer there. Of course, we were looking at a number of land opportunities for a college, which now becomes St Anne's College, which is there. And we went through the planning department here at Greater Shepparton City Council, who referred a lot of the modelling in terms of flood overlays, etc., through the CMA, and who've done their particular modelling. But of course, that was based then, and this is based now. And what is better is the new hydraulic mapping that they were able to do and the technologies that have come in. And so we're actually better informed now than what we've ever been in terms of what will flood and what will not flood. And in terms of land, people who bought land a long time ago, this will be win or it could be a loss, but it will give us a better provision in terms of where the flood mapping will be, particularly in this particular case, Shepparton and Marupna, and I wholeheartedly support this particular recommendation.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks?
Thank you. Just to note, this is, from what I understand, basically an update of the existing flood mapping that was done to take into account the changes due to climate change. Essentially, water is doing different things. We are having less frequent but heavier rainfalls, and it changes the way that water will rush through our systems. There will be landholders who are potentially impacted by this, maybe some who have flood, overlays removed, maybe some that have them put on when they weren't there before. We aren't putting this to community consultation from ours, as we are putting it through a planning scheme amendment, but we have been assured that through that process, there is the opportunity for individual landholders to put in submissions giving their feedback. This comes down to people know the individual lay of their land, and if they do have information that would be important, then there is the opportunity to provide that through this process. And I've been assured that we support individuals to take advantage of that process. So I do feel reassured that that process is there and is available. And now that we've had it updated, hopefully we don't have to do it again for a little while.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 71, item 12.6, an update to the Urban Development Program 2021, and there is also a recommendation on page 71. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Sali?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Yes, I would like the recommendation as a motion, as it's written on page 71 of the agenda, with an additional item being number 4, and that is have the CEO request the Victorian Planning Minister provide additional funds and resources to the Victorian Planning Authority to accelerate the rezoning of multiple residential and industrial growth fronts within Greater Shepparton.
Thank you very much, and all councillors are aware of that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dobson.
I would love to second that motion. The first three as printed plus motion number 4.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Recommendation number 4.
Thank you. Councillor Sali, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. 12 months ago, we endorsed the 2050 planning strategy, and 12 months ago, I, along with other councillors, highlighted the fact if the current uptake of land, both in residential and industrial, continues, we will be forced to act with urgency. The report itself, in some ways, is already outdated and doesn't reflect the issue of land supply today. In the last week, we have seen media coverage highlighting the importance of what a strong development and building industry means for our economic growth in Greater Shepparton. But more importantly, what would happen to our local economy if we can't provide sufficient land to allow for economic activity? We need to also acknowledge that under 7 years of zoned residential land is not good enough. And I also question why we aren't sitting at the recommended 15 years plus zoned supply of residential land. Even if we were to have 15 years zoned, it doesn't mean property owners will develop. Plus, I also question our future industrial precincts and really wonder if we are pursuing areas that the market isn't interested in developing. If we look at things with a different lens, we might get a better understanding of what our business investors are looking for. To achieve anything, you need resources, and I understand, like most organisations, the resources are slim. So perhaps investigating council's role in rezoning land can also be just to review and approve a developer-funded project. Council don't have to deliver the work and resources if a developer can do it. We all need to know, but more importantly, the community need to know that right now we are doing everything as efficiently and effectively as possible to get blocks on the ground. That is why I added an important action to the original recommendation to make sure we take immediate action and reach out to those in higher level of government and be brave enough to tell them we have a problem and we need help. I can speak all I want today, but actions mean more than words. Council have a responsibility to uphold the reputation that Greater Shepparton is an affordable destination to live and do business. The ball is now in our court to deliver on your expectations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Difficult to add, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe, difficult to add to that excellent summary of Councillor Sali. He's right in every aspect. There's some anecdotal stuff around at the moment that blocks of land that were, $200,000 or $175,000 resold 6 months later in the $250,000. And the reason is that there's no land available. And if you talk to any of the real estate agents at the moment and ask them about what blocks they've got, they haven't got any blocks for sale. And so there is a false premium put on blocks of land that shouldn't be there. Now, why is this so? There's 2 or 3 reasons. One would be, at the moment, low interest rates allows anybody to go and borrow any amount of money to buy a block of land. And so the cost of borrowing and the cost of maintaining that borrowing is being diminished somewhat, and so the cost then goes on to the actual capital cost of the block of land. A second area is that Shepparton, like a lot of regional areas, is growing. For example, in 2020 to 2021, the City of Greater Shepparton had a comparable contribution of building approval activity to that of Latrobe at 624 approvals that we had. The City of Greater Shepparton had substantially more approval activity compared to Wodonga, who is a bigger place than Shepparton, had 560. The Surf Coast, which is very popular, 546. East Gippsland at 541, and Moorabool down in Geelong had 526. Now that's good and bad. It shows that the Goulburn Valley is a preferred destination, and so it should be, because we've got all the elements of doing business, tourism, and now we've got Sam and Move, we've got other areas as well. But that comes at a cost, and I agree with the whole of the comments that made by Councillor Sali. This is a balancing act. Our growth rate was at 0.8, I think, before the 2021 year. It is now at 0.9, and that is a substantial growth, and so we've got to be able to move with it. A difficult process, the interesting factor about all this is once that COVID settles down and there's no longer in our system, God forbid, let's hope it happens soon. You know, what will that do to development within regional Victoria? People are moving out of Melbourne wanting to get into regional Victoria, and we're only 2 hours north of the CBD of Melbourne, and so we're a go-to situation. We've now got, what, 7 or 9 train services a day, which again puts us in the firing line for people wanting to do business up here. We've got great industry, we've got great food production, and we've got great retail, and things like the CBD upgrade with the Maud Street Mall, things like SAM and MOVE will only improve that.
Time. Councillor Dobson, have you finished, or do you want an extension? Finished. Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would a councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Spinks?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just briefly to say, I found this report to be very valuable, and I was surprised as well to see, we all, I think, anecdotally know there's been a boom and we're running out of land and we're addressing that, but also I was surprised to see the boom in Tatura is growing quite quickly as well. I think that was important information to get back. I think it's just important to also keep in mind that while we are experiencing this growth and this pressure on our land supply, and we rapidly try to rectify that and make sure that we have the required supply, we also have to keep in mind that with extra houses, with extra industry, comes pressure on every other service that we provide. You know, if we have increased industry, you know, we're still waiting on a bypass to get built. Where are those trucks going to go? If we have new homes, we have to make sure we have playgrounds and green spaces and footpaths and roads, rubbish and rates. You know, we've got to think about it. It is everything that we do, and this pressure is both on the need for growth, but also the pressure that comes from growth. And I just think it's important that we make sure that's in the conversation as well, and that we're looking at it holistically of how we make sure we're providing for our community at all times from all directions. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Just very briefly, I'd like to compliment Councillor Sali in adding that 4th point. I think that's really important to our CEO ask of the Victorian Planning Minister additional funding. We are at the point of where we're on a crisis, and like we are with climate change, action needs to be taken, and I think this would be terrific to get the additional financial monies for the planning, of course. And since the 2050, as Councillor Sali pointed out, you know, I've had a number of calls in regards to industry and residential, particularly for real estate agents, about land opening up, etc. So we are at a very crucial point. We sort of forecasted that 12 months ago, and it's hit us really quickly. So I compliment Councillor Sali and certainly the rest of the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. Unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 78, item 12.7, the proposed sale of land at 45 Parkside Drive, Shepparton, the affordable housing proposal. There is also a fairly lengthy recommendation on page 78 and 79. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Doolan?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I would like to move the recommendation on pages 78 and 79 as a motion. I won't read this motion, it's a long one.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spinks? Thank you. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'll quickly summarize the motion, and basically this is about a project that has been proposed by Women's Housing Limited, and its aim is to address the affordable housing needs in Shepparton. Women's Housing is a reputable organization. It's a not-for-profit organization, and it's working in a highly regulated, affordable housing sector. And Women's Housing Limited, they target women and children who are escaping family violence. So community housing associations like this one, they basically own and manage these housing projects. So this project aims to deliver the affordable housing outcomes, which is, as we all know, which is much needed by us. Our data evidence suggests that Shepparton has one of the highest domestic violence and homelessness rates in Victoria, as well as a severe lack of affordable housing. And we have just heard that we are going towards the lack of land supply. So if you put the whole picture together, it's not very positive. Just to remind everyone about the figures that we have in Greater Shepparton, according to the last study, we have nearly 5.5 homeless out of 1,000. We have more than 1,000 households that are on the waiting list of Victorian Social Housing Register. The Victorian Housing Register, it has 500 women from Shepparton, out of which 193 identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. 194 women, they have additional needs around family violence, and 122, they have requested for one-bedroom properties, and they are from women from 55 years of age and above. And mind you, we do, in Greater Shepparton, we also have very low housing stock diversity, whereby we don't have enough one-bedroom and two-bedroom housing units. And we also know that older women, they constitute the highest age bracket in homelessness in our region. We have done the study, we have developed our affordable housing strategy, which is basically built around the Homes First model, which supports the idea of providing a roof overhead to those experiencing homelessness, support them with wraparound services. So all in all, I endorse the in-principle support for the sale of land. And as for the design of the houses, the MOU condition clearly states that the council is to be party to and agree to the nature and design of the project, and is to approve the final design of the project before any development approval and construction commences. So on the basis of this, I support the intent for sale of land. Can I get an extension, please? Thank you. So this is the intent for sale of land to be consulted by the community, and I will keep my ears and eyes open for community's feedback, whether it is positive, negative, or neutral. We really need to know what the community thinks about this project. Just to remind everyone again that available evidence indicates that the provision of social housing will deliver benefits to both the individuals and also the broader community in the form of health sector savings, in the form of individual health and employment and income benefits. So there are all these areas that will benefit if we are able to provide affordable housing to those who are in need of that accommodation. Just to remind everyone that Council has committed to a let no one left behind policy in its 4-year strategic plan. So projects like these will allow us to walk the talk and deliver meaningful actions which are aligned with our strategy. So I'm happy to endorse this motion and looking forward to seeing the feedback from the community consultation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Spink, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I'm going to approach this very differently to how I spoke for the first one. I think passion and reasons are already out there, so I'll go from a slightly different tact. Once again, Council has been approached with a project that they would like to build on council land. So we are talking about in-principle support for the use of that land. An idea of design has been presented to us, but now going out to community consultation, we're able to hear from the community your thoughts on the ground of the feasibility of that design, of what needs to be thought of, possibly changed, possibly included. And that's the point of community consultation, is we want to hear all of that so that we can look at the proposal and make sure that it fits. I think most people across Shepparton, if not Greater Shepparton, are aware that there have been in the past attempts at social housing that have not gone well. We've learnt from that, and nobody wants to see that done again. we're talking about people's lives, and we want the best outcome for the people that are under are in our community. There is no one around this table or out there in the community that wants to make anything worse for the individuals that would potentially live in these houses or any houses. As Councillor Abdullah said, I think that it is fun to point out the irony of the previous item, talking about the lack of housing stock across Shepparton. I've certainly heard a lot of commentary around the suggestion of this sort of housing, whether it's social, affordable, whatever housing looks like, being, I suppose, more spread out across community. And I think in a perfect world, that'd be great. But the reality is there just isn't the land, and the demand is so high that when we're considering whether it's consultations that are currently out in the world, whether it's this proposal or whether it's ideas that will come to us in future, because of the sheer size and complexity of this issue, we have to consider them all. One of them does not solve the issue. One is not better than another. One is not, they all have to be considered on their individual merit, and they have to all be right in their own proposal. But we can't simply say that that's the right one, that will fix our housing crisis. That's the one, that's the right way to do it. Because we're just stuck between a rock and a brick wall.
Time, would you like an extension? You're granted.
So I think that we have to, every one of these that comes to us, we have to completely consider. And so putting it out, and so this is how we're going to do it. We're going to put it out to community consultation, and we want to hear everything that comes back. It will certainly be from all different directions, and that's the best way to do these processes. I highly encourage anyone that has thoughts on this, or against or for. This is something I've covered previously, that often we don't hear from the for because it's sort of just a done deal. Not a done deal. Oh my gosh, take that off. But that it is, as in, that's, you take for granted that someone else will speak that for you. But we genuinely need everyone to stand up for this issue. This is bigger than just 9 of us around the table, 7 of us around the table. This is bigger than just the people that will live in it. This is all of a community getting behind people in need. And so we want to hear from you. I certainly in principle support this proposal, and I look forward to it going out to consideration by community and to hearing the feedback and taking it under consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. We just spoke in the previous item regarding residential squeeze, and of course it wasn't just about land. If you look around Shepparton area particularly, the executive housing is so hard to get. House and land packages are hard to get, and I'm hearing it's taking about 2 years before you can get a builder to even get there. And affordable housing is absolutely no different. The squeeze is there as well. In principle, what we're asking for here is an in principle support by the Women's Housing Limited. And I know that what's been put forward, you know, what will the dwellings look like in terms of what the construction will be, etc. And there's been some ambiguity around that. So I'd like to thank very much the Director for Sustainability there, who's actually provided some additional information to our briefings that has helped and give me a good understanding in what it may look like there. I did measure it against the Affordable Housing Strategy, which was adopted back in 2020. And I looked at the targets of what we're asking for there. And it was about partnerships. It was about women, particularly, and families, vulnerable families, and about sourcing available land and properties and where we can actually do that. So in terms of the Affordable Housing Strategy, it's tick, tick, tick in regards to there. The intent is fantastic, and it still won't meet the need that we have to provide a starting base for those women, be it older or be it younger with young families, who require a stepping stone start. My concern has been, is 45 dwellings in one small estate, and whether that contravenes the affordable housing strategy, and whether it is the best practice in form of this particular recognised cohort. That I'm not 100% convinced with. However, at this stage I'm very comfortable with proceeding, because what we're doing is in principle support, and that it will come back to a council resolution afterwards. So I look forward very much for the public having a mature discussion with the public in regards to this particular proposal, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. Does any other council wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. A good society or a good community is a cohesive community, and a cohesive community takes the sum of many parts. And I believe that a cohesive community has the moral responsibility to take with them, as individuals, to take with them those people, take them along, those people who really can't fend for themselves in a manner that most of us would seem to be the normal. And so affordable housing becomes a way of doing this. And I believe, and I strongly believe, that the community not only has a moral obligation to join in this particular aspect of housing, but to assist us in doing so. So that's an overarching thought that I have in relation to this. I also looked at as Councillor Brophy, I looked at the affordable housing strategy, and the housing type section suggests that standard detached housing and low to medium rise apartments, along with other housing types, are the preferred types. Now, at the moment, as we all know, we're looking at one particular model, and this is another model. But I'd like to take everybody back to the actual words within the motion. And the motion says this, that we provide in principle support for the preparation of any funding application by Women's Housing Limited to purchase land at 45 Parkside Drive for the purposes of constructing approximately, what that means we don't know yet, 45 lots of affordable housing. So at this stage we're providing in principle support for the preparation of any funding application. Now there are certain methodologies that goes towards these funding application, and one of them is they've got to get in principle support from a partner such as the Greater Shepparton City Council, who have got the land and who are prepared to do a deal where they can't do in the commercial market. And so there are certain aspects that's got to be put forward first. And one of those is that the council has got to give an in-principle support to a funding application. The proponent for this particular application then goes to the government and says, okay, we've got an in-principle support. What other things do we need to do? Well, we've got to make sure the title boundaries are right. So let's go and check the title boundaries. And then we've got to go and see if the soil types are right. So we go and check the soil types. And that's the sort of thing that's got to happen before anything else comes back. And the second part says this, and anybody who knows Parkside Drive, and I was down there only...
Would you like any?
Thank you, I'd like another.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was down there the other day, and it's a good piece of land, nice houses there, and I would think it'd be a suitable spot. As I think Councillor Spink said, there is no one model that suits everybody. We've got a mixture of models, and I think we've got to look at it all. And point number 2 says that we note council's possible sale of land subject to a whole heap of things. And down further, it talks about approves the commencement of the process under section 114 of the Act to consider the sale of land, and it also talks about publishing a copy of a public notice on council's website and provide copy to owners and occupiers of all properties abutting the land and any other properties that officers considered to be affected. And the speakers before me have all talked about wanting to hear from the community. And this is a very important aspect. I believe I'd like to think that the community had come along with us. Is this the perfect solution? I don't know. But I can tell you this, that there are over 1,000 families that are in need of support. This particular proposition talks about up to 45. It's a drop in the ocean, but it's one of many, many more that I hope that this community can then affect going forward over the next few years, and take with us those folk who really who've had a bit of a problem in their life and who need safe and secure housing. I believe this project gives that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dobson. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Just prior to going to the vote, I just would like to perhaps have some clarification for the community that this is to go out to community consultation. I know there's some feedback in the community that they feel that their voices are not heard during the community consultation period. Please understand there is a process and we cannot make a predetermined decision until we have that community consultation process completed. So there is no predetermined decisions on any of the items we've discussed here today, particularly when we talk about community being involved. We depend on the community to help us make those informed decisions, and the community must be included in that decision making. And I thank those that have already started the process on a previous item. Thank you for your comments, councillors. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 88, item 13.1, adoption of lease and licence policy, licensee policy, and there is a recommendation also on page 88. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Councillor Brophy?
Mayor O'Keefe, I'd like to lay this item.
I need to have the item moved first, Councillor Brophy, so I need someone to actually move.
Certainly.
Would a councillor like to move a motion?
You're moving? Do you want me to move?
Thank you.
I'll move that the item 13.1, adoption of lease and licence policy, be laid on the table.
So can I just clarify, councillors, we need a motion so we can lay the item on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you need the motion.
That's okay. It's been.
Righto, well, let me do the initial, and then Councillor Brophy can have his time.
Would you like to move the recommendation?
Oh, well, I move that the council adopt the lease and licence policy version 1 is attached. My apologies for not knowing the process as I should.
That's right. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Spinks. Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Can I please lay this item 13.1 on the table?
Okay, all those in favour for the item to be laid on the table? Carried. Right, so we'll now move on to the next item. Item 13.2 on page 91. Memorandum of Understanding to participate in the North East and Goulburn Valley collaborative procurement of curbside services. There is also a recommendation on page 91. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Would someone like to move 13.2? Councillor Abdullah?
I would like to move the recommendation on page 91 that the council agree to participate in the procurement tender for council's curbside collection and associated service with the Goulburn Valley and the North East Regional Waste Resource Recovery Groups.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, quickly, this is about council's curbside collection and processing contracts. These contracts are due to expire in 2023, and there's an opportunity to partner with Northeast Waste and Resource Recovery Group and councils within the Goulburn Valley Waste and Resource Recovery Groups to coordinate and be part of the collaborative procurement process. So this is, at this point, all the participating councils within these two groups have completed an expression of interest as part of their intention to join in this collaborative procurement, to join in this regional tender, but it currently doesn't prevent a council from dropping out of the procurement at any time. Basically, this MOU is going to is an understanding that and a commitment from all the councils to be part of this this collaborative procurement process up to the point of considering the tender evaluation. And so I'm comfortable that by joining this collaborative procurement process, council, we will get the information, we'll be able to go out to the market and get the tender response, and whatever the response is for our curbside waste and recycling services, that response will come back to this council, and at that point a decision will be made about whether or not we want to join the final decision. So I think that's about it. And of course, as I've said, once the tender process is complete, they will give an evaluation report back to the council.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Brophy?
Thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. I've been one of advocation of bringing in other regional collective and partnerships. I think that sometimes if Greater Shepparton just stand alone, that you can miss out on some great opportunities. So I think this is a terrific undertaking. It's a memorandum of understanding what we're doing to participate with some collective others regarding the procurement of curbside services. There's one element to which I want to make sure that we do cover off on, and that is the procurement, the local content factor that we normally have within our own procurement policy. And I know that just in recent hours or in the recent day or so that our Director for Infrastructure has provided some undertaking in regards to some of the areas like, I think it's called social value, which may well be a little bit different than the local content factor, but it may well be the same. So we'll look at that, and hopefully that procurement percentage that we've got built into our particular procurement policy, which is 10% of local content, can be negotiated in that sense. And whether that be for that 10% local be a contractor for Greater Shepparton or from one of our collective or collaborative partners. And it's really not to seek an advantage over anybody else, but to really remain competitive. That's what that should be about there. And this is, this could be potentially a very long-term and very high-valued contract. So I look forward to the memorandum of understanding and progressing further.
Thank you very much. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 94. You'll see there's a 14.1 designation of confidentiality of information. You have the attachments. Item 15, documents for signing and sealing, we have nil received. On page 16, we have councillor reports. And 16.1, we have councillor activities for December 2021 and January 2022. Recommendation on page 95. Would a councillor like to move that motion? Councillor Dobson?
I move that the council receive and note the summary of councillors' community interactions and informal meetings of councillors.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spinks? Councillor Dobson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Plenty, thank you, Mayor O'Keefe. Plenty in the diary again for December to January, given the fact that we're in the Christmas period, but I'd just like to congratulate councillors on making themselves available for a variety of visits and keeping in touch with the community. It's very important that we do that, usually at night time, but it's very nice also to get invitations from various community groups. I'd also just like to make one note, congratulate the council staff on the Australia Day activities and their involvement there, and also the awards. And could I just make one further note, Mayor O'Keefe, is that the other evening we had the Sportsman's Hall of Fame, and Councillor Brophy and I are on the committee. I think we're just sitting there as also runs on this committee because it's very ably led and worked with some terrific people that just have got this particular committee at their heart. And I'd just like to nominate Don Kilgour. We were there the other night to watch this. A number of councillors were. Don Kilgour had, I think there was about 28 presentations. I think there was. You may stand to be corrected. But was there more than that? But each one of those had their own personal story. Now, he researched and did all that, and a lot of work. So I'd just like it somewhere noted that council acknowledges Don Kilgour's specifically, as well as the committee, in the work that he did on the Sportsman's Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.
Sportsperson's Hall of Fame.
Couldn't agree more. Councillor Spinks, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly to say, looking over it, it's such a healthy list of activities. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to as many as I'd like because cricket season just seems to go on for quite a while into the year. But I look forward, that's nearly over, so I look forward to getting to a few after that. But certainly, you know, I know for myself, and I'm sure others, the calendar's already starting to book up with all of the meetings that are starting again, and events are plenty across the municipality. So I'm going to hopefully not jinx us, but fingers crossed for a little bit more of a COVID-free year, and maybe the year that we've all been hoping for. Certainly I know getting onto council, one of the joys I was hoping to really be a part of was getting around to community and being a part of these events. And so hopefully this year we can all enjoy a little bit more of that and make sure that people can celebrate in the way they want to celebrate.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would a councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 97, 16.2 Council Committee Reports. We had nil received. Item 16.3, a notice of motion, amendment or rescission. We have received a notice of motion from Councillor Brophy, which is the item 16.3 on page 97. I do need to declare my conflict of interest, as I have and my husband have a building in Maud Street, which we rent out and would benefit from some of these decisions in regard to parking.
Mayor O'Keefe, I need to declare a general conflict of interest for the same reason as your good self.
Thank you very much. So I will now ask Councillor Brophy to take the chair.
Thank you. So that brings us to item 16.3.1. There is a recommendation on page 97. Would a councillor like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Spinks.
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. I would like to move the recommendation as a motion as it is printed on page 97 of the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Spinks?
Thank you. Yes, I will. As this has not been put forward by myself, I won't speak to it for too long. Simply to say I support the role of a councillor to put forward these norms and to push for things that we believe are important. I think it's a part of our responsibility as representatives of community. And so I support this nom being put forward in part for the sake of the fact that a nom is being put forward. It is just calling for a report. So in terms of, there isn't legal or financial considerations that we need to be aware of right at the moment. It's really a report that makes sense. We each year have this conversation around complementary timed parking, and we need to be making evidence-based decisions. So a report is simply a way to gather that information, see one way or the other how that does impact, and then be able to make decisions off of that. So for those reasons, I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Spinks. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Just to add that, yes, I do. I agree with what Councillor Sam Spinks has just mentioned, that it is that the process itself, the process of norm, yes, we support that. And And this motion is basically asking council staff to prepare a report at the end of the complementary CBD parking period. So I'm very much looking forward to that report, and I also believe that even without this norm, this was the intention, that a report has to be brought to the council for further assessment and further sort of decision making in terms of our budget preparation or in terms of our strategic direction towards the complementary parking. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and I endorse this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion?
I'd like to move an amendment, please.
Amendment to a notice of motion. Oh, yeah. Okay.
The point, sorry.
Go, Councillor Summers.
Yep, just that point 3 be removed from the motion.
Okay. Now we ask for a seconder for that.
Oh, you've got to consider whether that's an amendment or not.
Well, an amendment is to amend something by changing, without actually changing the intent of the motion. By removing that, it does change the intent.
Okay,
Unfortunately, thank you.
then I would like to speak against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Summers.
Thank you. I just think it doesn't need to stipulate that the finishing of this current initiative will occur. Everything can be achieved without that point 3, without saying that this free parking will be finished. The gist I got of this when it was emerging was that we wanted to continue free parking, whereas what we've come back with is that we're going to end it, consider it, and potentially start it again next financial year, which is extremely confusing for the community. And we are going to end up getting a lot of complaints from people who have parking fines, because they thought that the complementary parking was still going. This ad hoc approach never works. We either need to decide, are we going to keep parking free, or are we going to charge people to park on our streets? That's the simple thing. We cannot go back and forth with reports. I find that really frustrating. Yes, we do need the data. That should come to us anyway. If we move this, we will have to end free parking, whereas my understanding of what we wanted to do was continue free parking. So I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Summers. Would any other councillor like to speak for the motion? If nobody else speaking, I would like to please speak on behalf of the motion. Very nice point that you raised, Councillor Summers, and of course, as people would be, or some people would be aware, that this wasn't my original notice of motion. My original notice of motion was contrary to this, in the sense that those 3 points were there. The publicising of letting people know about the initiative finishing was so that they wouldn't get fined and that they would be aware that that was actually taking place. The other part of it that I really wanted to make sure that happened was that we could roll over and continue with the complementary parking till the end of the financial year. Unfortunately, the governance regulations prohibited me from doing that. So we've got what we have here in terms of that, and of course we've had 4 months of the complementary parking, and on the back of the 2 months from the previous year over the Christmas New Year period. So what's different? Why do we need to have this in place? Well, certainly the commencement of the Maud Street Mall, now the Maud Street redevelopment, and the impact on the retail traders, and quite a few, if not most, for 2022 as we go forward. There's been no further federal government support in regards to the pandemic too. Make no mistake, we are still in a pandemic, and locals and visitors are somewhat shy to move about, and as they used to within the community, a bit with small splashes of patronage. Council will receive a report on the merits of the complementary parking for the 4-month period. We needed to be within the 3-month period because to consider it on its financial impact on council, and to look going forward into the 2022-2023 council budget, in which, whichever form that plays out. We need the facts and analysis, but we also the intangible vibe that goes with that. The customer satisfaction, the point of difference against other regional cities. I asked the question, why do we have parking meters? and I'm sure council did not adopt decades ago just for increased revenue. No, they did it so that the shoppers had enough time to shop. It was convenience and close to the store that they wanted to go to. And it really was a deterrent for shop owners and employers just to park there all day as well. Hospitality, and I've seen a huge increase there over that 4-month period where they've been able to stop without having to pay, go in, get their coffees, get their lunch and keep moving on. And you can actually see, if you sit out there in some of the cafe areas, and you can see people coming in and out and using that to absolute advantage. And obviously that's going to, for hospitality retailers, help enormously. It's a lifeline to the business when they need it the most, and a benefit to shoppers about customer and bringing people into the CBD. But complimentary parking does come at a cost, and we still need to contract parking inspectors to have them contracted for timed parking, for disability parking spaces, and also for loading zones. We can't have a free-for-all, pun intended, as council and ultimately the ratepayers have to support this financially. So I look forward to that report and going forward from there. Thank you. Now I'll call for the vote.
Sorry,
Sorry.
Yeah, I might just speak to the motion if that's possible.
Okay, I'll just ask again. Sorry, is there any other councillor who would like to speak against the motion? Any other councillor who would like to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Councillor Brophy. I'll
Sally?
speak to that. Obviously some fair and reasonable comments have been made, and you're always going to have feedback for both sides. One side, the budget impact of council, and the other side, the benefit of complimentary parking to the community. And there are always so many reasons for and against complimentary parking. I just see the decision needs to be simplified. Personally, I see complimentary parking not as the single most important incentive, but it's one of many enablers that contribute to the success of our region. We can't forget that. It's not the most important, it's one of many that contribute to the success of our region. It gets highlighted as the only reason, and it's not. So we need to make sure that that is taken into consideration as well. Thank you, Councillor Brophy.
Thank you, Councillor Sally. We will now go for the vote.
Councillor Brophy, right
of reply, sorry, Councillor Spinks.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, it's interesting, Councillor Summers' point about it potentially being intended for the initiative to not, and that for myself is not at all how I read that, and I see it as the consideration of future complementary car parking in the Shepparton CBD, that being whether this report gathering the information we need to know at all for, against, otherwise, having that conversation. I in no way, and I'm not indicating that anyone around this table has, but I in no way am having the conversation about whether complementary parking should be continued at the end of this period, at another period, or at all. This is purely about that report, so that, for me, this is purely about the report so that we can have the data we need for any future conversations around the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now call for the vote. All those in favour? Carried, unopposed. Thank you.
Councillor Dobson. I just need to get Councillor Dobson back. Here he is. So, councillors, we turn to page 98, item 17, urgent business not included on the agenda, nil received, and that is the end of our meeting today. I declare the meeting closed at almost right on 5 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.